Namaste, everybody. This is Sukalyan Sengupta, Director of the Center for Indic Studies. And I'm very pleased to start a new project that we have embarked upon, India at 75 series. As all of you know, India gained its independence in 1947, August 15, 1947. So this is the 75th year. And as expected, there are many commemoration events happening in India and all around the world. So we also at Center for Indic Studies thought, why not do a dedicated series on this very important milestone. And as you know, we have had many seminars in the past where we brought in experts and we listened to them. But I thought this time, why not tap into some of our in-house experts? I mean, we have a very good galaxy of in-house experts, but they are so humble that we don't really know about their depth of knowledge. And so I think this is a very good initiation that we have taken, where we would like to hear from those whom we think we know very closely, but we have not really heard from them on such kind of dedicated topics. So just to set the stage, as I said, August 15, 1947, there is always this question, let me just admit two people who are, okay. So there is always this question, well, India's independence, was it a new nation that was born? Or is it in a way a continuation of what may not have been a nation state, but what people call a civilizational state? So as a civilization, as you all know, India has existed for millennia. And even in his very famous Tryst with Destiny speech on that date of Indian independence, our first Prime Minister Nehru, he did mention that India discovers herself again. So this again, this enduring civilization, that is a very unique aspects. And 1947, in that time frame, after the Second World War, many countries gained their independence, let's say in the next 10 years or so. But India is unique because, number one, it had so much diversity. It has so much diversity: linguistic, ethnic, religious, geographical, cultural, etc., etc. And in a way, all these threads had to be sewn together in a modern republic or a modern constitutional republic. And the second thing about India was that when India gained its independence, it had many challenges. And in fact, there were many experts at that time who said that India as a nation state will not last for, some people said 20 years, some people said 30 years. The point being that the divisions between India, according to them, were so great that a modern state could not exist. It could not survive. But survive it has, and as you will hear from some of them, it has even thrived. So this is a very good milestone to reflect and also to see what challenges lie ahead and how we can address them. So this panel discussion, what we will do is we will have each panelist, there are 3 panelists, and I will introduce them in due course of time. Each panelist will offer their reflection for about 10 minutes or so. Then we will give time for the panelists to ask questions amongst themselves, and another 10-15 minutes of that. And then we will open it up for questions from the audience. But before I go to the first panelist, I would just like to make an announcement. There we go. We are very pleased to announce that next Wednesday, December 8th, 5 p.m. at Woodland Commons. So this is a physical event. We will have a pre-release of a movie. There is this movie, The Kashmir Files, which is now complete and will be officially released in January of next year. But as part of the promotion of this movie, some groups and some people are holding screenings or pre-screenings in the United States. And we are very fortunate to be one of the institutions chosen for this pre-release. So the format will be that there will be a partial screening of this movie, about half an hour or so. And that will be followed by a panel discussion, which will have the director of the movie, Vivek Agnihotri, a member of the cast, Pallavi Joshi, and some other panelists. So please mark it on your calendars. It's next Wednesday, December 8th, 5 to 7 p.m. at Woodland Commons, and there will be refreshments. So with that, let me introduce our first panelist, Professor T.K. Roy, Tridip Da for us, a very distinguished member of our faculty. He's now retired, and he's also one of the founding members of the Center for Indic Studies. So we were founded in 2001, and Tridip Da was a very central member and initiator of this project to found the Center for Indic Studies. He was a professor of mechanical engineering, but I thought best to start with Tridip Da because he has agreed to give reflections on India's independence. He vividly remembers the day of that, and for the past 50 years or so, he has been outside of India, but as they say, you can take an Indian out of India, but you cannot take India out of an Indian. So Tridip Da, please begin your reflections.
Okay. Am I there on the screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Sukalyan, for the very kind introduction. When you mentioned to me a few days ago regarding this panel thing, I had a little inquiry about it as to what would be my responsibilities. And you mentioned it will be 10 minutes talk by the three panelists. So, and the topic you also mentioned was your personal reflection on India's independence of 75 years. And when you said that, then I said, okay, I have a lot of things that associated with that, so it shouldn't be any problem for me to talk for 10 minutes. So I agreed, and so here I am. And after I talked to you, I started pondering on to what to talk about. The 75 years, I broke into 3 quarter centuries of 25 years, and I found the first 25 years, 1947 to like 1972, most of the time there, I was in India growing up. And those were very important years in my life. So I thought that I will concentrate on that. And that's the reason I told that the rest of the panelists probably will pick up that vacuum, but first 25 years are very important in my life, and that impacted my entire background. And I thought there are a lot of good things in that thing. Many of you, and most of you, I should say, that are much younger than me. So you would find some kinds of crumbs of archaeological find probably from that, what I saw in my life. So I'm going to talk on those first 25 years mostly, and then the rest I have visited India occasionally during vacations and all that, summer breaks. There might be some things that I will mention about that. So in 1947, when India got its independence, I was very young. I really do not remember exactly the day of the India's independence or any kind of celebration associated with it, the 15th August. But later on, as I grew up, I found the importance and the celebrations associated with it. My father used to be in the Department of Forest government official. So he would get together with some of his officials in our residential office father had and hoist a national flag, tricolor. And then they were followed by a little sweet distribution among all the people and singing of Jana Gana Mana and Bharat Mata Ki Jai, all those kinds of things. And at school at the same time, the headmaster would perform the flag hoisting ceremony, which as a student we would go and attend that. And that was a big festival. The whole day would be a day off. On top of that thing, the day 15th August also happened to be my oldest brother's birthday. So that in our house used to be a big festival to celebrate, with good food, pulao and other kinds of good stuff. So I remember 15th of August celebration embedded into my life that way. But the time after that, the 15th August, I was growing up. It was a tumultuous time actually for India because so many things were happening. And it was a transition time, as you know, any kind of a transition time for a country or for an individual. Those are exciting times, but also could be very turbulent times. Things were happening very fast, changing things and all that thing. So what happened was that the educational system completely turned, and therefore it affected my entire educational background, what to choose for what kind of schooling to go to and those things. So that really impacted my entire life, as I can see. First thing, also let me talk about some memory of Gandhiji. Even though Gandhiji was alive during those times when I was growing up, I have very little memory of any kind of a speech that I heard either on radio during that time. Later on, I heard many of his speeches on radio, which were broadcast. But Gandhiji was alive, that I knew, and any kind of association with him was from a picture that my father used to on his desk. So I took that as this was a cutout of Mahatma Gandhi, and I used to play with the thing. So that became a kind of a piece of stuff in my toy box. But the day Gandhiji was assassinated, 30th of January 1948, I was very young, but I felt somehow the entire atmosphere wherever I lived in my house and the surrounding, very quiet, some kind of a eerie quietness, silence in the atmosphere. My mother said that don't go out. She probably suspected some kind of a riot or violence going to erupt. So I was confined to the courtyard, but the entire atmosphere felt very eerie, quiet, as if you say that even the skies cry when a great soul departs. probably that was something. Gandhi ji, Mahatma ji, we call, was a great soul, no doubt. I mean, there have been people who have many questions about whether he was a great man or not, but no doubt he was a great soul. He affected the entire world. And a man of truth, of transparency, great character, you could not deny those characters. And therefore, to me, he was a great man. And I think I had a little bit sense of that thing on that day, that the entire country was crying or feeling sorry for it. So something was awry in the country. Most important thing after the independence in my life, I found was the state reorganization that was established in 1953 and the commission completed in 1956. That affected quite a bit my life. You know why? Because my father, who was a government service in the Bihar government, he was transferred completely to an area where it was totally Hindi medium. We were initially, let me say, that we were in the Bengali speaking part of Bihar. Bihar had some portions of it. So the state reorganization was established to create states on the basis of language. That way it would be. As India got independent at that time in 1947, I think there were some 27 states and there are more than 500 princely states. So that was very difficult to administer. So the idea was to put together states with the boundaries would be based on linguistic, the population speak, and also the princely states also were combined. So when the state reorganization completed its report, they created 14 states initially and about 27 princely states. The reason my father was transferred was the chief minister of Bihar. He wanted, because we were Bengali speaking, to move to a portion which is completely Hindi speaking. That way he can reduce the number of people who are on the streets who are talking in Bengali. That way this portion would be going to Bihar. That was the kind of a political reason that he transferred. But anyway, my life was changed because we moved to an area where it was completely Hindi medium. Nobody knew that Hindi is a language even. And my mother had a lot of difficulty there also. What my two elder brothers had difficulty because they were in a higher grade and they had to change their medium of instruction right away overnight from there, and they were in a higher grade, in 8th or 9th grade, completely to a different, right from ABC. So that was one of the things. For me, it was not that great difficulty because I started to go to school right there with the Hindi medium. So I started my but you know, I started in the 5th grade and it was not that difficult for me to adjust, but I started with the complete Hindi medium. Another thing that happened was the instructions in English also stopped from 4th grade. And therefore, I'm looking at some time.
Yes, Siddhartha, if you can
give me a little bit hint on the time.
Yeah, if you can wrap it up in 2 to 3 minutes, that will be
Okay.
great.
So the high school graduation, though I had a curriculum that was kind of a regular, but 8th grade, they suddenly made it that you have to choose either going to a art stream or science stream or commerce stream. And that I was not familiar, neither my father was familiar. So I started going to the art stream because my father had a transferable job. So you choose science stream, maybe where he is transferred, I may not get that. So I was attending. All of a sudden, the science teacher who knew us very well, he came to my father and said, "What are you doing? You're going to ruin his life because he's attending art school, art section. He should go to science, otherwise he won't be doing any medical or science or engineering." So I moved to science. So that is how physics, chemistry, mathematics advanced. Now, the Sanskrit teacher, up to 7th grade, I was in the class of learning Sanskrit, that was compulsory. 8th grade, it could be optional. So he came again running to me, see, "What are you doing? You are discontinuing Sanskrit." "If you do that thing, मैं तुम्हारा टांग तोड़ दूंगा." I still remember, I said, "No, sir, I will be attending your class." And it was good that I stayed with Sanskrit, and I kept that as an optional course for me. So I took that course, and I think the advantage was that I learned Sanskrit at a high level in matriculation up to that. And so right now I can recite Gita and things, and also Sukallan, you know that I perform some Saraswati Puja at your residence, and Satyanarayan Puja also I get invited. So I continue with at least our scriptural learning and use of the Sanskrit language. So that, that was one of the things that happened. Now, when I graduated from school, high school, that immediately, the state of area where we were there, that became West Bengal area. And I was studying through Bihar school education. So the problem was that which way I go to, where to go to for my intermediate science. So I went to my father's friend said I can put him in Presidency College. He took my roll number, and Presidency College admitted me. But my mother said, "No, you cannot go to Presidency. It is in Calcutta. It's too far, 200 miles from us." So finally, we decided to go to Ranchi, St. Xavier's College, which was 40 miles, and my elder brother was there. So room and board would be easier. So that's how my total career changed, kind of a thing. I went to, after that, to engineering in Bihar. And then I came to United States after that in 1971. That was another time when I found that India was going through a tough time, struggle in East Pakistan, East Pakistan, West Pakistan, that fight was going on. And Indira Gandhi was the prime minister. And finally, East Bengal got separated because Sheikh Mujibur Rahman didn't want to stay with Pakistan. They were not allowing him to become the prime minister, which legitimately he should have been, depending on the number of seats his Awami League had won. So those are the kinds of things. We were in Hawaii at that time, collected some money for the refugees that were coming to India. And about 10 million people, refugees who were suffering, they migrated to India in West Bengal and Assam mostly. And I found that those were the times which were very tumultuous time, difficult times, both for India and as we were growing outside. I had a personal, just let me finish with this thing, a friend in Hawaii. We shared the room with 4 people, myself, a student from Calcutta, and a Saha was a Bangladeshi guy, and Ahmed was a Pakistani guy. And at that time, there was so much killing going on. So the people from the student from Bangladesh, he could not get hold of his parents' connection or anything. And all those days were very difficult for us to live in the house where you have a Pakistani and a Bangladeshi, very sensitive situation for us to live in that. And even though I am still in connection with that friend of Bangladesh, we did not have the courage to ask him, did he get any news of his relatives in Bangladesh, because they were all kind of a slaughter going on there, genocide. Anyway, I got to finish it at that point because the time is running out. So we'll talk about other things later on.
Very good. Thank you so much, Tridib. And as you heard from him, I mean, most of us, we take it for granted that this state means this is the language, and that's how its citizens are defined. But there was a time before 1956 when states were not based on language. And so that transition, I can imagine, must have been very hard for many, many people. And incidentally, this is the week of 50 years of liberation of Bangladesh. So there are, as many of you may have seen in the media, many, many events to commemorate that very epochal event in Indian history and South Asian history for that matter. So thank you so much, Tridibda. And with that, we move to Professor Satya Paraitam. He is a professor in the Charlton College of Business, and he is also the Assistant Director of the Center for Indic Studies, co-advisor of the India Students Association, and the faculty advisor to UMass Dartmouth Cricket Club. So he wears many hats, and he's been a keen observer of Indian history, politics, culture, etc. So I will let Satya take over. Satya, please. You are muted, Satya.
Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Sukalyan Sengupta. My voice, there's some hoarseness in the voice. Please excuse me if I sound okay. And a wonderful experience from Professor T.K. Roy. It was very much enlightening. And then, as far as I'm concerned, I do not know much about the time when India got independence in 1947 because I was not born at that time. But still, what I have done is that, in my short presentation, I don't take much time. I'm going to go over the bullet points of, we call it achievements or failures or whatever you call, but from 47 till 2021, what are the most important years? I just wanted to give a small recapitulation of the things. And can I share my screen?
Yes, Satya, you have screen sharing rights. Go ahead.
Yeah. So can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah, only 4 slides. I'm going to go through some points. This presentation by me, Satya Paraitam, first slide you can avoid. And 47 to 67, 20 years time. Let me see, first in 1951, we got general elections. Jawaharlal Nehru became the first India Prime Minister after winning a thumping majority. And in America, they got freedom to vote only after 150 years of independence, whereas we got the vote right from the day one. That was a significant achievement. And in 51, India hosted for the first Asian Games in New Delhi. In 1956, India's first nuclear reactor, Apsara, was launched on August 4th, 1956. In 1958, first movie nominated for Oscar Awards, the movie was Mother India. And second great thing happened in 1958 was that I was born. Green Revolution in 1960, that increased the wheat production. And if I go to 1947-48, the first Kashmir War, one of the problems was that first Kashmir War was between India and Pakistan. The war ended when Maharaja Hari Singh signed an instrument of accession to India. Though you can see that the war ended on that day, but still the fights are going on even now. In 1962, one of the major things happened was the Sino-Indo War, the China-India War. So these are the basic movements to capture from 47 to 67. Then 67 to 87, if we see 20 years time, just capturing in small. Major event was on July 1969, there was a bank nationalization of 14 banks. That was a major step in India from the financial sector. In 1970, there was White Revolution. That was a major event. That is about the dairy farming, dairy development program. India became the world's largest milk producer. And in 1972, there was a similar agreement, that is a peace negotiation between Pakistan and India. And I hope that negotiation is still intact. In 1974, from the physics science side, the first nuclear test was conducted. Pokhran 1, India became one of the 5 nuclear-powered countries in the world in 1974. In 75, first space satellite known as Aryabhata was launched. Emergency declared between 77 to 79, that was the time where Indira Gandhi declared emergency. In 1977, India won, in 77, first non-Congress Prime Minister was elected, that is Morarji Desai. That was non-Congress minister, you can say. In 1983, India won the first World Cup. That was the third tournament, I think. First 2 won by West Indies, the third one in 1983 by India's first World Cup. That was history. In 1984, collaborating with the USSR, India sent Rakesh Sharma, the first astronaut, into the space. In 1984, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was assassinated, of course. At the same time, in 1984, there was the Bhopal gas tragedy. Even now, I think victims are there suffering. And in 1986, Bhopal scandal. In 87, India hosted World Cup. In India, they hosted World Cup, and Australia won the cup. So these were the major events. I'm not talking about economic side, what is the increase in GDP, all these things. I'm not focusing on that. Then, 87 to 2007, I just distributed into 20 years span, There were some other events also in between, but I captured only some of the highlights. In 89, Bhagalpur riots, one of the worst Hindu-Muslim violence happened in Indian history. About 1,000 people were killed. In 1991, liberalization and also assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. In 1992, Babri Masjid demolition and following riots took place in 92. In 92, one very big scam by Harshad Mehta. It was a really very big scam, the banking sector. In 1993, Mumbai blasts. In 98, BJP was formed, and Atal Bihari Vajpayee became Prime Minister. In 1998, nuclear bomb tests, Pokhran 2, were conducted. In 1999, Kargil War that took place. In 2000, 3 new states were formed: Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand, and Jharkhand. So 28 states, I think, by then at that time. Then 2001, Golden Quadrilateral Project, very big project connecting 4 big cities in India. That is Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Calcutta. Highway was constructed, connecting all these 4 major cities in India. In 2004, tsunami came in the southern part of India and killed 10,000 people. And in 2004, BJP lost power, and Manmohan Singh became the Prime Minister. Again, the Congress party took over and became the Prime Minister. In 2005, the Right to Information Act was passed. People can ask any kind of information by going to any agency. So these are the major highlights up to 2007. I think I'm going very fast, isn't it? Is it okay, sir?
That's okay, Satya.
That is good.
Yeah. And in 2007 to 21, the last phase. In 2008, Chandrayaan, I think Chandrayaan means the route. It was launched to explore the moon. In 2008, first gold medal in Olympics won by Abhinav Bindra in 10M air rifle event. First gold medal in 2008, almost after 40, 50 years of independence. In 2009, Right to Education Act, that is to make everyone need to go to school. There is 25% reservation for the poor people. Anyone, they can have reservation based on this 2009 Right to Education Act. In 2010, Commonwealth Games. And here India won 100 medals. India ranked second actually. Australia won 101 medals, I think, if I'm wrong, if I'm correct. So 2011, India won second World Cup, led by MS Dhoni. He was a captain. After 1983, we won World Cup in cricket in 2011. In 2013, National Food Security Act was passed to provide subsidized food to the about 1.2 million people in India. In 2014, Telangana, a new state, was formed as the 29th state, and K.C. Rao, K. Chandrasekhar Rao, became the chief minister of Telangana. 2016, demonetization of 500 rupees and 1000 rupees notes. And then 2017, GST, one indirect tax. 2020, whole country was gripped by COVID-19. 2021, COVID-19 vaccination for over half of the population. So these are the major events when I summed up from 1947 to 2000 in a bullet points form. And then about the culture and other things, many other aspects, I think the Bela Gupta madam will take over. Am I clear, sir, in my presentation? Very brief point.
Yes, yes, Satya, thank you so much. You highlighted the main events of these past 75 years.
Yeah.
And just to kind of add to that, some of these we are still grappling with, in the sense that Satya talked about the Green Revolution, and the Green Revolution did wonders for India in terms of achieving self-sufficiency in food grain production.
Yes.
And now, as I understand, India even exports food grains. But as you know, now we are into a new phase where we have to look at how we can have more sustainable agriculture, because some of the principles of Green Revolution, they are not sustainable. They did wonders in terms of achieving, quantum leap in food grain production, but now we have to kind of complement it and supplement it with sustainable farm practices, etc. Then Satya talked about the creation of Telangana, and to kind of just continue from Tridib Das' talk, Tridib Da talked about the reorganization of states based on language, and Telangana became the state where, when India now had two states where Telugu was the official language. I mean, the original Andhra Pradesh and then Telangana. So nation building is a continuous process. So anyway, so we will now move to our third panelist, Belaji. Belaji, I will just, for those of you who may not know her, she has worked in the Library of Congress in their India office in New Delhi as a librarian, cataloger, and assistant supervisory librarian for over 2 decades. She was in the cataloging in Hindi, Rajasthani, and 13 Indian dialects. So both Tridib Da and Satya talked about linguistic diversity. And so you can imagine that if one has to now catalog and make some kind of an organized effort to put together all this Indic knowledge, how many dialects one needs to grapple with. So she worked was cataloging in Hindi, Rajasthani, 13 Indian dialects. During her time, she was an acquisitions officer serving Indic materials for the Library of Congress in Washington, DC, and 52 other academic libraries, including the prestigious Ivy League universities in the United States. She has worked at the Library Technical Services at Rutgers, and presently she is the head of Library Technical Services on our campus, and also the cataloging and metadata librarian. And she will speak on a project whereby a group of scholars tried to bring in or tried to put together a lexicon, some 259 key words that are associated with the India and Indic knowledge system. So I will let Belaji explain. Belaji, please.
Thank you, Professor Sugalyan. I'm very honored to be presenting on the occasion of the Center for Indic Studies, India at 75, a project to commemorate the 75 years of India's independence. And I will be discussing the book Keywords for India, which has been edited by Rukmini Bhaya Nair and Peter Ronald D'Souza. This book has been published by Bloomsbury Academic from London, New York, Oxford, New Delhi, as well as Sydney in the year 2020. I reviewed this book for the American Library Association's Association of College and Research Libraries Choice Reviews. But before we go on, I would like to first give an introduction of India's civilization before embarking on the book review. So let's begin. India is a microcosm of the world. And I hope you can all see my screen here.
You can.
If it is not visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it is.
So India is a microcosm of the world, and it is not just a country, but a spiritual experience that has given Vedic philosophy, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, which we also call Yoga, Mimamsa, and Vedanta to the world. And each of these philosophies have delineated man's purpose on earth. India's culture is pluralistic and it is dynamic. As Jawaharlal Nehru said, the first Prime Minister of India, there is something living and dynamic about the Indian heritage and the same set of moral and mental qualities in the people of the Northwest and those in the East, West, and South of India, despite geographical distances. India's civilization is as old as mankind itself. Mohenjo-daro, an Indus Valley civilization in Northwest India, is a testament to this fact. More than 6,000 years old, with well-built cities, including a well-developed drainage system, trade, and practicing agrarian life, it was very well developed. India is a land of the Himalayas, with some of the highest mountain ranges in the world, and has many rivers originating from it. The Indus that gave birth to the Indus Valley civilization. Then there is the mighty Brahmaputra, the deeply revered Ganga that has fertilized the land and the hearts of the people, and the Yamuna River with its legends of Lord Krishna and the gopis. India has been conquered several times, but has never instigated war on another country. In spite of being conquered by foreign empires, India has never broken from its past. It has absorbed foreign cultures and become even more vibrant. India is diverse in its culture, people, food, religion, and languages. Today, India stands on the cusp of a modern era, a democratic form of government with a constitution that secures justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity to all its citizens. This vibrant democracy is looking up to the universe to take a flight to Mars in the 21st century. The Indian government is building a strong online infrastructure and many technological advances are taking place. Yet there are several problems that face India today. Some of these are poverty, exploitation of women, corruption in politics, illiteracy, the caste system, and its inherent inequality. It would take several hours, if not days, to elucidate even one aspect of the many issues that I mentioned here. There are many resources that explain this much better than I could ever do. And today I will elucidate on one such resource, that is the book Keywords for India, that I recently reviewed for Choice Reviews. Choice is the publishing unit of Association of College and Research Libraries. And this book encompasses the rich cultural diversity of the Indian subcontinent in its choice of almost 259 contemporary keywords. Though a selective list, it is an excellent one because it reflects the philology, philosophy, social life, art, religion, history, politics, economy of this vast and diverse land. The results of this Herculean task of over 200 intellects has resulted in an analysis of colloquial terms that are from more than 50 modern and ancient languages of the subcontinent. Some of these are Sanskrit, Pali, Hindi, Urdu, Nepali, Tamil, and Indic English. The terms date from time immemorial to the 21st century, and the reader has a rare insight bordering into the evocative experience of the Indian consciousness, as the terms are explained in the context of their evolution and relevance to modern Indian sensibilities. For example, and I looked into the book for many examples like this, but today we don't have so much time. Otherwise, I could just go on and on with this, but it's a beautiful book. And one of the examples that I looked in, because I was I've always been very fascinated by the Bhagavad Gita, is that Bhagavad Gita is mentioned 15 times in 15 different contexts in the book. On page 21, it is mentioned in the context of ahimsa. Page 26 in the context of bhava and emotions. Page 27 in the context of bhakti. Page 34 in the context of Vedanta. Page 50 in the context of desire. Again, in page 57 in the context of Maya. 58, moksha. Page 66, Purana. Page 104, Sahitya or literature. Page 180, Yoga or yoga. Page 285, Seva. Page 288, Sukh Dukh. Page 290, Swaraj. Page 331, Pravachan. Page 333, in the context of Shruti and Smriti. The introduction, index, and extensive references provide an informed and critically engaged perspective. And the book is divided into 7 chapters by topic, which are classical heritages, databases of memory, contemporary aesthetic modes, reimaginings. The second chapter includes words like Alankar, Bharatnatyam, Bollywood, Jatra, South Indian films. So you can see the vast variety that this book is trying to cover. Chapter 3 is on the economic mantras, media, technological change. Chapter 4 is titled Intimacies, Culture and Material Culture. It includes keywords like azan, chulha, which is the Indian, you could say the gas oven, then kuli, street children. Chapter 5 is emancipatory imaginaries and includes words such as Adivasi, Dalit, dowry, Gandhian, vote bank. And then there is another chapter on languages and self-reflection and on politics and the political. This book delineates concepts that dive into the depths of realism, imagery, life experiences, and the ever-evolving cognition that is both conscious and unconscious in the Indian thought process and psyche. Keywords for India introduces the finer nuances of India to the world. I would actually like to say that I feel that no one book can do justice to the vastness of India, its diverse and immense history, culture, society, politics, languages, and literatures. However, Keywords for India does fill the role of elucidating the civilization of India in its choice of keywords. So this is my presentation today, and I thank you very much for giving me the honor of presenting in front of such a distinguished audience. And I really appreciate this. Thank you.
Thank you, Belaji. Thank you so much. And with that, I had thought we would have time for panelists to ask questions of each other, but I think we will go into the general question and answer mode, and we can embed these questions of panelists to each other with that. So let's see. I mean, if you have a question for any of the panelists, please use the raise hand feature, or you can type in your question in the chat box. I will read them out, or you can just raise your hand on the screen itself. And if I spot it, I will then let you take over. So any questions for the panelists? So let me begin, Belaji. This exercise of using keywords as a kind of mechanism to look into the culture and history.
Sir,
I think
Just a moment, Satya.
Pappu Raman,
Mr. Pappu is raising hand.
yeah.
Okay, Professor Pappu, please go ahead. You are muted, sir.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah. When I look back at 75 years of Indian history, first reflection is, of course, I spent the early years after partition in Delhi when there were so many refugees, everybody on the road, you know. Very, very pathetic scene those days in Delhi in the 50s, so to say, when I was a student of Delhi. Then I went to a college called Punjab University Camp College. That's where I got my degree, because after the partition, for all the refugees, they built a new college, you know, so that the refugees can go there. And I was one of the students who studied in that college. Anyway, that's apart from that one. When I look back at the key figure or figures who made India into a unity is Vallabhbhai Patel and his his ICS secretary, VP Menon. For all of us, you know, to know why India is what it is now, we have to read the VP Menon's book, The Story of the Integration of Indian States. What the British did when they left was, they only gave 25% of Indian territory to the Congress, and 75% of the Indian states were ruled by the small rulers. They were all made autonomous, sovereign nations. Just imagine so many sovereign nations, including, there was a small Jamindar in South India, I forgot his name. He had only 10 acres of land. He became a sovereign, independent guy. Okay, it required this so much of a skills of VP Menon and Vallabhbhai Patel to do two sorts of things. Number one, they have offered them money so that there is a kind of a bought them over and made them sign the instrument of accession so that they will become the part of the Indian. That's one thing. Other people who did not want to join the Indian Union, especially, for example, the Nawab of Jungat, he wanted to join Pakistan. What can India government do? Okay, because they are independent to join either India or Pakistan. And the Nawab of Jungat wanted to join Pakistan. Then, anyway, he was subdued. They had to use the force here to act, and they have asked him to sign the declaration or else. That was the Patel. The next one was the Nawab of the Hyderabad. Hyderabad state independent. They don't want to join into India or Pakistan. They wanted to remain an independent nation. So Vallabhbhai Patel time, there was what is, we don't call that military action, but also the police action, Hyderabad police action, whereby the Nawab of Hyderabad acceded to join the India. The third one, which came after Nehru time, was how to get rid of the foreigners still ruling India, especially very few people remember the what we call the Portugal's, we call it police action, not a military occupation. You know, the word that is used is police action, whereby we got rid of the Portuguese, you know, in Goa and other places. Yeah. And finally, of course, we are stuck with Kashmir, whereby the Maharaja of Kashmir, for example, he wanted to also originally to stay independent. But then when he figured out that the Pakistani forces were moving into Kashmir, then he has signed the instrument of accession. Dr. Karan Singh will tell all those details, you know, and whereby he became a part of the Indian movement. Anyway, it is always, I think the students should always think first why we are what we are is because it is a kind of the birth of a nation, the agonies of a birth of a nation is very terrible, really. So some of those centrifugal forces are still dominating us. Some of them, the states these days are thinking that they are independent nations, like the old Nawabs and so on. These are some thoughts, of mine. Okay, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Pappu. So for those of you who are seeing him for the first time, Professor Pappu retired from Miami University in Ohio, and he is the founder of the Vedanta Congress, and it was held on his university campus for 20 times. And then when he retired, the Center for Indic Studies, we took over the responsibility of hosting that conference. So we are very indebted to him. So thank you, Dr. Pappu. Now, let's see. We have one question, Tridibda, from Maureen Hall. She asks, and it's so nice to have Maureen back amidst us. We haven't seen her for a long, long time. Anyway, leaving that aside. So Tridibda, Maureen asks, what do you see as the challenges and strengths for the future of India?
Hi, Maureen. Thank you for asking that question. I also have the same question myself. Actually, I find two things that bothers India. One is the corruption in the administration and even in businesses all around. No matter what you do in India, you have to pay some extra price for getting it done. You buy even for reservation of a ticket in railway, you are giving the right price, which is scheduled price. But then that clerk on the other side is waiting. Maybe he wants to have a little bit extra money so that he can get it going. And I have seen that thing when I go to visit India several times, the same problem, and that bothers me quite a bit. How do we get rid of that problem? But that is something that I have seen that thing, and we need to definitely take care of that part. Secondly, I also find that India is progressing pretty good in many areas. Women's education has improved. Also, there is a good amount of emphasis by the government of India for the education of women. In many states, they have taken different promotional things. In West Bengal, they have given what do you call a Kumari stipend or something. So for any unmarried girl, she will get some kind of a stipend, because marriage is one of the ways that most of the women used to have some kind of a support through the husband. But now they are getting educated, and also some kind of a stipend too if they want to start some kind of business or whatever. So those are some of the positive things that I have seen. But there, India needs to do quite a bit more on healthcare, and the child care. A lot of still childbirth deaths are there. So I would say that health and hygiene should be another area in which India should work. Clean drinking energy, that is one of the areas, because that's going to be a scarcity. Even now it is so. So what's going to happen in the future is another problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Tridibda. There has been some chat on the chat box. Balramji made, I think, tongue-in-cheek, humorous comment that it seems that the bribing, what Tridibda was talking about, the bribing, it started during the making of India by Sardar Patel, who bribed erstwhile rulers to join India. And Satya kind of disagrees, saying that, well, we cannot call it bribe, because Sardar Patel didn't do it for personal benefit. When we say a bribe, it means there is some personal financial motive involved. Just to kind of continue on that thread, there has been a lot of research now which suggests that bribing in India is on the decline in general terms because of technology. Now, technology has made so many aspects, has intruded into so many aspects that the prior privilege that some people had, that has been obliterated. So, for example, train reservations. I remember, and I think all of you remember during your times, getting a train reservation was very challenging. Many times it involved bribes, but now technology has made this platform, I mean, I'm calling platform, not pun, the technology platform, I mean, whereby you just log into a computer and you get your train ticket. So there is no question of bribing these people at the counter or etc. So, but of course, when we say bribe, it's not just limited to these petty bribes, as I call it. There are, there's this lot of discussion about how crony capitalism, as we call it, has now not only intruded, but entrenched in India, whereby these major corporate houses pretty much have so much control, not just of industry, but media and also political influence, so forth and so on. So anyway, it's a topic to itself. I mean, we have reached 1 hour of our discussion, but I do want to let you ask questions if you have any for our distinguished panelists. Anybody who has any question for either of the 3 panelists? Okay, so Belaji, let me continue with the question that I was trying to frame. This idea of looking at keywords, compendium of keywords to describe a culture, I mean, it's very laudable. But with India, I think the challenges are very unique because, as you yourself said, there is so much diversity that a particular keyword in one context may have a very different meaning in a different context. So would you like to comment on that?
Right. So you have brought up a very important point, and 2 important points, in fact. One is that India is too vast a country to be brought to light in a single text. And I do not dispute that, but at least an attempt has to be made at some point in time. Because as you know, our Upanishads, the Vedas were all in the beginning of time when Vedas began, they were actually word of mouth. They were never written down. So to actually grasp some knowledge for us now in the 21st century, it does perlocate down when you are just going to not just going to do it by word of mouth. I may get it from my mother or from my grandmother or from my grandfather, but how much of it can I get? And so it is so important to put things into words. And I'm so glad that the Vedas were ultimately put down into words, though I feel that so much of India's culture and literature has been lost to time because it was never really written down, those wise words of wise sages, or, some even think that they were words coming down directly from God. And today itself, that literature exists not because it's old, but because it has a timeless quality. So that timeless quality needs to be captured. And unless something is written down, and I'm not saying that it can be done in one text or in one book, but unless something is written down, we will not be able to record it and to understand it. And for a person like me, I need to read and reread because I never understand anything by reading it once. So, it's so important to have a book like even Keywords of India, though it may not be complete and no one can do justice to the vast vastness of India, but at least an attempt has been made. And, and I feel it's a tremendous attempt. And also, as I said, just to take an example of the Bhagavad Gita, it has come into, so this keyword is not like it's words arranged alphabetically like a dictionary and then you just go through that. It's actually divided into various chapters. Each chapter is talking about a concept, and then you read that word, a concept like Bhagavad Gita in terms of moksha, or in terms of yoga, or in terms of, ahimsa, and you get a fuller picture of it. But at the same time, the book is it's making a tremendous impact, because it's using all of the faculties known to man, because it's talking about culture, it's talking about history, it's talking about society, it's talking about the social fabric of India through these keywords, and one gets a lot of knowledge by just reading into that one concept. For example, the Bhagavad Gita. And though some people may think Bhagavad Gita is just literature, but others may think that it's a religious text. And, it can be interpreted in 101 ways, just as India can be interpreted in 101 ways and more, you could interpret Indian culture, Indian literature, Indian language, Indian society in so many ways. And I think this book made a brave attempt. I hope
Very good. Yes. Thank you so much, Belaji. And just to add, Belaji talked about this tremendous effort to compile all this knowledge. There is this initiative by the government of India. It's called NAMAMI, National Manuscript Mission. Even today, there are millions of manuscripts that have not been even catalogued, let alone transcribed or photocopied or what, because these manuscripts, many of them are in private hands. I mean, in the Indic tradition, manuscripts were handed from generation to generation in families. So there is this tremendous work that needs to be done to kind of get some sense of what this corpus of Indic knowledge system is. So thank you so much, Belaji. Balramji, he has written that he has a question to ask. So Balramji, let us know for whom is it, the question that is.
I think for all of them. So I recently, there was a celebration of independence, India's Independence Day in Providence with the governor and others. And it happened to be that day I was also having a meeting with Andy Pickett, who is my friend from Britain. And I was a little bit late, so I told him that I'm sorry, I was busy in celebrating India's Independence Day. And he laughed very loudly. He said, "What independence?" He said, "You have no independence. You are still using our system." So what kind of thing you're talking about? This is very important to all three of the panelists. You all said, India is like a microcosm of the entire world, and it has made so much progress, and Mahatma Gandhi and others have obviously played a huge role, including Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. But it is a system that is not of India. You're talking about manuscripts, individual manuscripts. India is a country which recognizes individuals. When we are talking about equality or this kind of group and that caste and that women group and that Dalit group, that linguistic groups, you are putting them in one. When India had already, like in a group, when India already recognized individuals. So that's why there's so many manuscripts, so many. It culturally, India is very free. It gives people freedom. Now, recognition and fairness and justice has to be at the individual level as far as India is concerned. But we have what my good friend Andy Pickett said. We have a system of colonial system from his point of view, which is trying to put everything in one and try to rule from that. And that's why they had to bribe. That's the Sardar Patel had to bribe, and the bribe still continues, because you do not recognize the individuals and their qualities. When they say Aham Brahmasmi, individuals are everything. They are the microcosm. And that recognition continues in Indian culture over a long period of time, and it is closer to truth than to what we have created throughout the world. And I think my question to all of you is, this is the greatest challenge, to be able to communicate this idea in a friendly and caring manners to rest of the world, and also by practice, and whether that is possible.
So it's a very profound question, one which will require a whole session to itself. But please, panelists, if you have quick comments to make, please go ahead. Satya, yeah, go ahead, please.
It's a wonderful point you raised, sir. The thing we talk about India, freedom to do anything what we want. But freedom, what you are telling is about Aham Brahmasmi, that freedom was there even before independence, right? So we don't talk about spiritual freedom. We talk about the physical freedom here. So that was the focus in 1947 when we got independence. Of course, unfortunately, what happened, if I just put it in a comic way, before 1947, we had everything, but not freedom. After 47, we had freedom and nothing else. If you see the infrastructure built by Britishers, we follow the same system. As you rightly mentioned, sir, we follow the same system. But it takes a long time to have our own system. Isn't it? So it takes a long time because we had about 250 years of ruling. Before there also several people ruled this entire country. And it takes a long time to, we cannot bring change overnight. Right? At the individual level, everybody has freedom, but collectively, because as Balaji also mentioned, it is so much diversity is there, cultural diversity is there, and there are so many languages, right? Different cultures. We have subcultures, cultures within the cultures, and it's difficult to bring all these into one common platform overnight. It may take, I think, maybe 4 to 5 centuries. Minimum. About the corruption, I just wanted to add one small point. If I take just 2 minutes time, 40 years back, there was a editorial article came in Times of India in India about corruption. About corruption, the 3 lead top country people, the president of ESA, and in those days, USSR, the president and Indian prime minister. These 3 people meet and had the roundtable conference. The topic was how to root out corruption. They were discussing for 2-3 hours and nobody could get to the conclusion. They said, let us pray God. So they prayed God, God came. ES president asked, sir, I have one question. When can I see my country without corruption? Everybody should be happy and all that. God said it will take 100 years. Then ES president, he felt, oh, I cannot be alive to see 100 years. So he cries and leaves the room. Then USSR president asked, when can I see my country free of corruption? He said 200 years. Again, the USSR president he also left, crying. Then Indian prime minister asked, when can I see my country free of corruption? According to your calculation, 100 years, 200 years, maybe 300 years or 400 years. When can I see my country free of corruption? God cried and left the room. Even I cannot see. So that was a comic incident. That was the editorial came in about 40 years back in Times of India. In those days, you can see the corruption was at the top level at the trade. So what I mean to say, it takes a long time to bring radical change. It takes a long time. It's a wonderful question, sir. One can write a book on that to answer your question.
Yes, of course. Several books, in fact. Tridibda Belaji, you want to comment on or add anything to Satya regarding Balramji's original question?
No, I think the freedom for me is the freedom that is not just like that you can do anything. You have to abide by some certain social rules, some rules of the country, the law and order. That's how, as a human civilization, you want to live. And, one of the things that we have as you see here, even in the United States, look at what is happening with the pandemic. The disease is increasing. Now we have a new version, Omicron or something. Why it is happening? Well, it is coming from a different country. But even in the United States, we have about 60 million people who have chosen not to take the vaccine, and those population, for some reason or other, they think they are a free country. They don't want to do that thing. Even in going into the airplanes, you have seen those fights with the air hostesses, how these people, no, I'm not going to women. So that is not really the freedom that we are talking about. There is individual responsibilities to live in a society with mutual respect for each other is one of the things that we need to have. Otherwise, we will be not really free. Freedom is not that you have the freedom to go nude in the street and dance just because you want to do that. So we need to follow certain rules, regulations, and also, above all, look for the other. I think that is what the emphasis is, not for me, but for the other, how I'm not offending anybody else and infringing on the rights of the others.
Very good. Thank you so much, Tridipta. Belaji, you want to add anything?
I think the question itself is very profound, and Professor Satya and Professor Roy have answered it so well that I really don't need to add anything more to it. I'll just say that freedom comes with a lot of responsibilities, and that we should be very careful with our freedom and not misuse it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Belaji. And I know we have gone beyond our allotted hour, but I do see Professor Pappu raising his hand. So, Professor Pappu, a quick question. You have to unmute yourself, Professor. Professor Pappu.
He doesn't have a question. You have to read his lips.
Okay.
You have to unmute. I don't think we can hear him.
Yes. Quick question,
Okay.
Professor Pappu.
Okay, it is not a question, just a comment. I think in order to understand how free we are, we have to take into account Gandhi's distinction between Swadeshi and Swaraj. Swadeshi means, of course, we are Swadeshi, because we are a sovereign territory. Swaraj, we have never attained. Swaraj is a kind of a self-rule that applies both the individual and the state. Do we think independently without being, okay, how much autonomous we are? This is the sort of a thing, Gandhi was thinking. We have attained Swadeshi, all right. When the British have left, we are Swadeshi, okay? But Swaraj, we have not attained. That Swaraj comes from internally, from it is a self-rule. Self-rule doesn't mean not being influenced by foreign nations and so on. How much we think of ourselves independently, autonomously, as free beings, that is the important thing that we have not attained. We are always following the Western patterns of life and everything there, So we are not truly, we don't really have a Swaraj. We only have a Swadeshi. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, my question actually was independence, and all the panelists talked about freedom, which is true. You have the freedom, but you don't have the independence. Those are the two different things, which is what Professor Pappu is saying. But I mean, this is a continuing process. Hopefully,
Yeah.
All right. So with that, I thank you again for attending this event. And as I said, this is the first of a series. So we plan to have many more such events in December and in the next semester. Please remember our next major event, that is December 8th, Wednesday. That's an in-person event, the pre-release of that movie, The Kashmir Files, and I will send a detailed email with all the instructions as to where to park and all that. So with that, namaste and thank you very much. Hope to see you soon.
all right, great. Thank you.